Hey kids, gather around for an amazing story from the Bible. It's all about a brave prophet named Elijah and a super stubborn king named Ahab. King Ahab and his wife, Queen Jezebel, were not very nice. They told everyone in their kingdom to stop worshiping the one true God and instead pray to a fake god named Baal. But Elijah knew that was wrong, and he wasn't afraid to say so. One day, Elijah went right up to King Ahab and said, "Let's settle this once and for all. Let's have a contest to see who the real God is." King Ahab was surprised, but he agreed. This was going to be the biggest showdown ever, a true test of power between the real God and the pretend god Baal. Elijah said, "You bring your 450 prophets of Baal, and I'll come alone. We'll meet on top of Mount Carmel." He told them, "We will each build an altar and prepare a sacrifice. But here's the rule. No one is allowed to light the fire. We will each pray to our God, and the God who answers with fire from heaven. He is the true God." All the people who had gathered to watch thought this was a great idea. They shouted, "Yes, let's do it." The stage was set for an epic contest. So the 450 prophets of Baal went first. They built their altar, a big pile of wood and stones, and placed their sacrifice on top. Then they started to pray. They called out, "O Baal, hear us." They shouted and danced around their altar all morning, but nothing happened. No fire, not even a tiny spark. The sun got higher and hotter, but their altar stayed cold. Elijah watched them and couldn't help but chuckle a little. He teased them. "Maybe you should shout louder. Perhaps your God is thinking, or maybe he's busy, or maybe he's on a trip, or perhaps he's sleeping, and you need to wake him up." Hearing this, the prophets of Baal got even crazier. They shouted as loud as they could. They jumped and danced wildly. They even hurt themselves, hoping Baal would see them and send fire. They did this all afternoon until they were completely exhausted. But still, there was no answer. No voice, no spark, no fire. Their God was silent because, well, he wasn't real. Then it was Elijah's turn. He calmly repaired an old altar of the Lord that had been broken down. He used 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel. He placed the wood on top, and then the sacrifice. But then Elijah did something really strange. He turned to the people and said, "Bring me 4 large jars of water." They brought them. "Pour the water all over the sacrifice and the wood," he commanded. They did. "Do it a second time," he said. They poured more water. "Do it a third time." He shouted. They poured even more water until the sacrifice was completely soaked. Water filled the trench that Elijah had dug all around the altar. Now, how could a fire possibly start on something so wet? It seemed impossible. Elijah was showing everyone that this wasn't a trick. If a fire started now, it could only be from the power of God. Then, as the sun began to set, Elijah stepped forward and prayed a simple, powerful prayer. He didn't shout or dance. He just spoke from his heart. He said, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back to you again." And guess what happened next? Whoosh! Instantly, a blazing fire fell from the sky. It wasn't just a small fire. It was a huge, powerful blast of flames. The fire from heaven completely burned up the sacrifice, the wet wood, the stones of the altar, and even the dust around it. It was so hot, it licked up all the water that was in the trench. Everything was gone in a flash of incredible power. When all the people saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. They were amazed and a little scared. They all shouted together with one voice, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." They finally understood who the one true God was. The contest was over, and God had won. The false prophets of Baal knew they had lost, and they tried to run away, but they couldn't escape. The people knew they had been tricked by them for too long. But the story doesn't end there. Remember how there had been no rain for over 3 years? The ground was dry and cracked, and everyone was suffering. After the amazing fire from heaven, Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel to pray again. This time, he prayed for rain. He knelt down and put his face between his knees, praying with all his might. He told his servant, "Go and look toward the sea." The servant went, looked, and came back. "There is nothing," he said. Elijah told him, "Go back 7 times." The servant went back again and again. On the 7th time, the servant returned with exciting news. "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea," he reported. Even though it was just a tiny cloud, Elijah knew God had answered his prayer. He told his servant to run and tell King Ahab, "Hurry, get in your chariot and go home before the rain stops you." Very soon, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind began to blow, and then a heavy rain began to fall. The long, terrible drought was finally over. The land could drink again, and everything would grow. It was another miracle. So, what can we learn from this incredible story of Elijah? It teaches us that our God is real, powerful, and he hears our prayers. Elijah wasn't afraid to stand up for God, even when he was the only one. And he prayed with great faith, believing God would answer. He prayed for the impossible fire on a wet altar and rain after years of drought, and God answered in a big way. We can be brave like Elijah, too. When you pray, you can talk to God about anything, big or small. You can pray with boldness and confidence, knowing that God is listening, and he has the power to do amazing things in your life. He is the one true God who loves you very much. Good night and sleep well. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing Bible stories.